For most of animation history, Disney set the standard for how a story should look and be told. But somewhere in the last 15 years, the studio stopped trying new things and started repeating the old ones. Dreamworks, on the other hand, went the other way, throwing new ideas and art styles at the wall to see what stuck. Then in June, both studios showed us what they've been working on next. One of those trailers had the internet arguing over whether it was framed for a phone, while the other had people pausing it frame by frame just to look at the backgrounds. So today, let's break down what DreamWorks understands about animation that Disney doesn't. And to do that, we need to go back to when Disney was the one setting trends.
Who is the fairest one of all?
Watching this now, the animation for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs looks chopped, but back in 1937, this hand-drawn film was revolutionary. In fact, not only did Disney set the bar for how animation should look in the following decades, but it also built the fairy tale structure that some people still wish for today. And a lot of the studio's biggest era came down to one man, Jeffrey Katzenberg, the former chairman. This guy ran Disney's film division through the Renaissance, giving us bangers like The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. But after a very public fallout, he left Disney for good. And you know what they say, revenge is a dish best served cold, which is how Jeffrey co-founded Dreamworks, a studio designed to rival Disney and Pixar in particular. And you could actually see it in the early days, like when Disney made A Bug's Life, so Dreamworks not only created Ants, but rushed it into theaters first. But the film that cemented the studio's anti-Disney image came out in 2001.
Better out than in, I always say.
Well, it's no way to behave in front of a princess.
What the hell?
Thanks.
Shrek took every trope Disney spent 60 years building and dumped an ogre on it. The knight in shining armor becomes a big green swamp creature and the princess out-burps him. Although, she's part ogre, so I can see why. Throw in a weird interspecies relationship between donkey and dragon, and it's no wonder Shrek was so unforgettable. In fact, it even won the first ever Oscar for Best Animated Feature. And so, DreamWorks spent the next few years happily poking Disney in the ribs. But the problem with being the anti-something is that you're still following someone else's lead. Somewhere along the way, though, DreamWorks stopped caring what Disney was doing and grew a voice of its own.
I'm not a big fat panda. I'm the big fat panda.
Things only got better for DreamWorks once the squishy panda came into the picture. Kung Fu Panda has no jokes at Disney's expense. It's just a story about a guy nobody believed in who comes into his own. Besides the absolute comedy gold, this film really upped DreamWorks' animation game too. I mean, just the incredible amount of jiggle in Poe's belly must have taken so much work. This is the era where DreamWorks established its new identity, creating original stories instead of relying on pop culture references and Disney parodies. Now, this isn't to say Disney had stopped making good things, because it absolutely hadn't. Everything about this scene in Tangled was magic personified. The warm oil painting lighting blended into 3D models is gorgeous enough, but the fact that Rapunzel's 70-foot hair needed its own custom software just shows how dedicated the animators were. Everything from the look to the story worked wonders in the film. Unfortunately, the studio found a formula that worked and never left it. Most of its upcoming movies had the same character proportions, more or less, for over a decade. They weren't bad stories, of course, just predictable. And once the original idea started running low, Disney started the sequel and live-action era, which we are all still living through today. To be fair, Moana 2 and Zootopia 2 aren't bad films per se, they just weren't surprising. There's a difference between a studio that keeps making things and a studio that keeps making new things, and lately, only DreamWorks has been doing the latter. Of course, experimenting means you get to fail a lot more too. It's no secret that DreamWorks has often been called inconsistent, and honestly, that's fair. For every Prince of Egypt, there's a Shark Tale. For every Kung Fu Panda, there's a Turbo. But personally, I think that's the right kind of inconsistent. If you're a studio that swings at new ideas, some of those swings are gonna miss. That's just part of the process. Sure, Disney's output is far steadier in comparison, but that's because nobody over there is attempting anything that could genuinely fail, which is exactly why so much of it lands as mediocre now, from the plot right down to the animation. Meanwhile, Dreamworks actively tried to innovate over the years, something we saw most clearly in 2022 with The Bad Guys.
You're afraid because I'm the big bad wolf.
The fact that this came out a few months after Boss Baby 2 is hilarious to me, because this film kicked off an entirely new animation style for the studio. You can see the anime influence in the movement and the character expressions, which tracks since the director pulled directly from Lupin III. But if you thought that was a big swing, Dreamworks went one level higher just a few months later.
Hey, you want to see something cool?
Nobody expected Puss in Boots: The Last Wish to look this incredible, with brushstrokes laid over everything and backgrounds that look like a painting come to life, which is already a unique step, because 3D animation had been heading in only one direction since Toy Story: photorealism. Every studio was chasing the same goal of making things look real, but this sequel started borrowing from hand-drawn 2D instead. Even the choppy frame rate was a deliberate choice, and in this case, it absolutely works. But animation isn't the only reason this film hit so hard. For a movie about a cat in a hat, Last Wish made its villain death itself, which is something no other Western studio has pulled off. In the film, Puss burned through 8 lives without a second thought, and he's finally realizing the consequences of his actions. The best part is how the visuals follow the story rather than the other way around. Whenever death appears on screen, you can even see the color drain from the scene. Now, credit where it's due, Dreamworks didn't invent any of this. Sony got there first with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse in 2018. The film helped open the door for movies like The Bad Guys and The Last Wish to make 3D animation look more artistic. But an open door only gets you so far. You still need a good script along with it, and Dreamworks pulled it off again in 2024.
Ready?
I guess I have to be.
Who knew a movie about a robot would have us sobbing? The Wild Robot features soft watercolor forests and light that soaks through the frame. Almost everything here was hand-painted, with the forest and the animals taking heavy inspiration from Miyazaki. But the best thing about the film is undoubtedly Roz. She starts as a clean, standard CG character who visually doesn't belong in a single frame of this world. But as she gets damaged and weathered and covered in moss, her surface shifts into a hand-painted style with visible brushstrokes. By the end, she truly becomes the embodiment of a wild robot. And I love how the animation and story work in tandem. Her increasingly broken body as the film progresses shows clearly the sacrifices a mother is willing to make for her child. And so, Dreamworks somehow managed to not just write a heartwarming story, but used animation to reflect the emotions perfectly. In the past, Disney used to be the one doing that. And to be fair, it's not like the studio stopped trying entirely. Because on Disney's 100th birthday, it made its biggest swing in years. When the studio announced a brand new animation style for its centennial film, everyone got excited. The idea was to take the storybook watercolor look of Disney's earliest work and lay it over modern CG. 100 years of the studio in one frame. It sounded like a beautiful idea, until the film came out.
I've got a good feeling about it!
To be fair, the backgrounds in Wish absolutely ate with their soft painted textures. It's the characters where it all fell apart.
Look at this idiot. One ball and no brains.
What a bunch of losers!
Right off the bat, I see the subtle nod to the Seven Dwarfs there. We'll come back to that. Because the real problem is that Asha and everyone around her are standard Disney CG, with the same features the studio has used since Tangled. When you drop them into a storybook painting, you end up with two art styles openly in conflict. It's like Disney wanted to try something new while still looking exactly like Disney. And in trying to do both, the final result just looked off. Then there's the motion problem. To sell the storybook feel, the film switches motion blur off in places, which makes fast movements stutter. Now, it's true that The Last Wish drops frames too. The difference is that it actually works as an artistic choice in that film. But here, it just looks unfinished, and don't even get me started on the color. If you put the castle in Tangled next to the castle in Wish, you'll see a world of difference. Although still somewhat beautiful, Rosas is muted and gray. Due to the flat lighting and muddy midtones, there's barely any contrast, which is pretty disappointing for a film about wishes and a kingdom that's supposed to be the most magical place on Earth. Meanwhile, you can pause Tangled on literally any frame and find more color than Wish manages in an entire act. Now, to be fair, none of this is what actually sank the movie. That was the writing. Asha is the adorable protagonist Disney has been writing on loop for a decade, and Magnifico had the setup for something genuinely interesting, a man who lost everything, so he built a kingdom where nobody else has to. Disney could have let that need to protect everyone slowly turn into paranoia. Instead, an evil book shows up, turning him into a cackling tyrant by the next scene. The most disappointing part, though, is how Wish is stuffed with references. Asha has 7 friends who are basically the 7 dwarves. There are nods to the magic mirror in Snow White, and even a Peter Pan reference in one of the wishes. For a 100th anniversary, some of that is lovely, but the film focuses too much on things Disney made in the past that it lacks originality. And that's the pattern, really. The studio keeps reaching for what worked before instead of risking anything new, and at this point, everyone can see it. We've already talked about how Disney has a sequel problem lately. Sure, they're not terrible, but they're definitely predictable. Same story with the live-action remakes. Some of them worked, while others completely flopped. Snow White. So when Disney recently announced an original film, Hexed, after ages, naturally everyone got pretty excited. The concept art was gorgeous, featuring a magical world with strange creatures. Until we got the trailer in June.
My whole life, I've felt like there was something wrong with me.
We're 3 seconds in, and I already feel like I've seen this movie. The outcast who doesn't fit her family. The girl who's a bit too much for everyone around her. This has been the premise for so many Disney films for over a decade now. Then there's Billy herself. She has the same face the studio's been rendering since Tangled, with a few changes here and there. Is it just me, or does she look so much like Honey Marin from Frozen 2? Now, to be fair, similar-looking characters aren't automatically a problem. Case in point, Studio Ghibli. Kiki and Sheeta look like they could be cousins, yet nobody cares since they have such distinct personalities. Disney's problem, though, is that the sameness leaked past the face. Billy sounds like the protagonists who came before her. Quirky, misunderstood at home, and about to be told she was special the whole time. And credit where it's due, the world around her looks genuinely vibrant. Sadly, so far, the least interesting thing in this trailer is the main character. And I don't know about you, but to me, the story is giving Alice in Wonderland meets Beauty and the Beast meets Harry Potter, which isn't an issue per se, since plenty of great films are built out of familiar parts. But there's one comparison Disney really can't wave off.
I don't fit in at home. You don't fit in here. If I stay, we could not fit in together.
Yep, this already sounds similar to Hexed. The Owl House ran on Disney Channel from 2020. It's about a teenage girl who doesn't fit in, is at odds with her mother, and stumbles through a portal into a magical realm full of witches. Disney cut it short, saying it didn't fit the brand. But 3 years later, we get Hexed, which, you guessed it, is another story about a teenage girl who doesn't get along with her mom and falls through a portal into a world full of witches. Oh, and the school mascot is an owl. Although there are a bunch of coincidences between the two, it's the concept art that really drives the point home. Originally, the main character was supposed to be a boy heading into the magical world with his mom. The film was supposed to be about a mother-son dynamic in a world full of wonder, but somewhere in development, that boy turned into the same adorable girl the studio has already made a few times. Meanwhile, Dreamworks dropped 2 trailers around the same time as Hexed, and the first one went badly.
You really can't help yourself, can you?
Hell to the no, I can't. Shrek and Donkey, 2 stalwart friends off on another whirlwind big city adventure.
Shrek 5 gave us our first proper look at the new animation, and people hated it. Shrek used to look crunchy and textured, like something you'd actually find in a swamp. The new version is too smooth and polished, like our favorite ogre's been getting facials. Naturally, the trailer got negative reactions, many even calling it AI slop. In fact, Universal ended up switching off the comments on the video, and so DreamWorks experimented with animation again, but this time it flopped. Thankfully though, the second trailer stuck the landing.
Risa? Something's happening!
No way.
Hard to believe this came out of the same studio as the Shrek 5 trailer. Forgotten Island is about two best friends, Joe and Risa, spending their last night together before their lives split apart. They find a portal to the island of Nakali, straight out of Filipino folklore, and the price of getting home is forgetting each other. That's a premise with real stakes, and we're all for it. The animation blends 3D CG with hand-drawn 2D and a 90s retro edge. It's the same team that made The Last Wish, pushing further than they did there, with heavy anime influence in the action and the expressions. Personally, I feel like the film once again drew inspiration from Sony, with expressions very reminiscent of K-pop demon hunters.
Your hair!
What about it?
Man, the amount of detail on her scalp is pure cinema. So once again, DreamWorks is taking its shots. Sure, sometimes you miss the mark, like with Shrek 5, but other times you get Forgotten Island, and that trade is worth making every single time. As for Disney, maybe there's more to Hexed than the trailer's showing us. I mean, I'd love to be wrong about it. But right now, only one of these studios is willing to experiment with animation, and it's definitely not Disney.